Have you ever wanted to pick the brain of a peony expert and learn all things peonies? Well, if that is you, let me tell you, we are in for a treat today. I had the privilege and opportunity to interview Wanda from Fox Hollow Peonies in Alaska, and she is a peony expert. And we dove into all things growing peonies, planting, fertilizing, pest and disease prevention and issues, favorite varieties, and so much more. It was an incredible interview. It's long. I would recommend you could listen to it while you're doing something else, kind of like a podcast. But Wanda is a peony expert. She has grown peonies for 16 years and she has 5,000 peonies. Wow, that is such a scale. And so she's seen a lot of things and she graciously shared her expertise and her knowledge. So if you don't know me, I'm Ruth Ann from Abundant Blooms Flower Farm in Door, Michigan, where I farm on about an acre and sell almost exclusively to florists. I'm standing in my peony patch here, which is had a major loss this year due to frost, but usually there would be, hundreds and hundreds of blooms here, but there's not. But this is my peonies. I grow about 400, and let me tell you, I learned a lot of things in this interview. So I farm here with my husband. I sell almost exclusively to florists and then have online educational content for flower farmers like yourself. Let's just dive right into this interview. Every single minute of it is gold. I learned things and it was just such a delight. So enjoy. Today on the channel, we have something very exciting. We have a special guest, Wanda from Fox Hollow Peonies in Alaska, talking all about peonies. She is a peony expert. So she's on here today with us, and I just want to start by welcoming her and thanking her for coming here. I'd love it, Wanda, if you would just tell us a little bit about how you got started farming and your farm and where you're located and like who you sell and why you're growing peonies
All right.
and other things.
Great. Well, hi, everyone. And I'm so excited to talk to you today. I was just telling Ruth Ann that I was a teacher for 33 years. So I love teaching. I love talking about peonies. So I actually come from many generations of farmers. My family, I was born in Minnesota, and my family had a farm there before they moved to Alaska when I was 4 years old. And so many, many generations of farmers. And my mom always had a big greenhouse and garden and lots of flower beds around our home growing up. So I feel like farming is kind of in my genes. So I always have had a garden and greenhouse wherever my husband have lived. We've lived in a number of different communities up here in Alaska. But how our peony farm got started is kind of an amazing story. Uh, Back in 2006, there was a big wildland fire that started down the highway from us. It's a very dry summer. We hadn't had rain for quite a while. So before we knew it, we had this roaring forest fire coming up towards our house. And thankfully, there was a wildland firefighting crew that came to our place, and all of our neighbors came and our local fire department, and they managed to save our house. Thank the Lord. But all the woods, we had woods around all three sides of our house, and it all burned. And like many families in Alaska, we heat our house and our water with wood, and we have a wood burning stove. And so we had all this standing dry wood, which we used for 4 years right outside our door to heat our house and everything. Well, in 2010, we had this big cleared area, and there is quite a bit of agriculture happening in our area here. And so my husband said, well, we should see if a local farmer wants to like lease this field from us and put in hay or something. Well, as part of my teaching, I was taking summer classes, and I was taking a course at the University of Alaska Fairbanks on agriculture in the classroom. And the first day, the keynote speaker talked about how they had just discovered a couple years beforehand that peonies were a big possible agriculture product for Alaska, and that Alaska has peonies blooming when basically nobody else in the world has them. And she said some farmers in Fairbanks had put in peonies on large scale, and they were surviving our winters and they were doing great. And she said she feels like the next big egg crop for Alaska is going to be peonies. And she said, if I had any property right now, I'd be putting in peonies. So I went home and told my husband, guess what we're putting in that field? Which he wasn't too excited about because at the time he was retired law enforcement and currently working as a Teamster. So Mr. Tough Guy. And he was like, I'm not growing flowers. The next weekend, they had a informational meeting going on about peonies with those two farms, giving a little presentation. And so I sent him to the meeting because I still was taking this class on the weekends. And he came home and said, yep, I think this is what we should do. So that fall 2010, we planted our first 250 roots. And we basically just kept going. So we're on year 16 now. And we just kept going, adding, every year we added more. One year we planted 2,000, which is absolutely crazy. I wouldn't recommend anybody doing that. But we just basically wanted to fill that field up. So we finally got up to where we have 5,000 peony plants now. And
Wow.
yeah, so we're in year 16, and it's really quite interesting at our Farm Bureau conference up here in Alaska in earlier this year. They said that peony sales have surpassed all other farm products that are being sold out of Alaska. And there's something like $1 million in peony sales out of Alaska this last year. There's probably close to 50 farms up here now. So, but we were the fourth farm in the interior to jump on the bandwagon and get started with peonies.
Wow, that I had no idea. That is so cool. So,
So we have a little saying. We say that there's a verse in the Bible that says, "He will give you beauty for ashes," and that's kind of our little farm theme. And we're called Fox Hollow because we have a family of foxes that has lived at the edge of our peony field ever since we built our house here. And their babies come out and frolic around out there while we're working in the field. And I do have a Fox Hollow Peonies YouTube channel, and I have a couple of videos on there way at the beginning that go into more detail about how our farm got started. And also there's a video that shows about 8 or 10 little fox babies zipping around the field and frolicking around. So
wow, that's really cool. And yeah, I'm gonna have to check out your YouTube channel. I didn't even know you had a YouTube channel, so I'm excited.
yeah.
Um, do you grow anything beside peonies?
Yeah, I sure do. Well, first of all, you shouldn't harvest off your peonies for the first 3 or 4 years. So after a couple years of harvesting peonies, I soon realized, as I'm sure most of you do, that peony harvest is slam bam. I call it five slamma jamma. It's really intense. And up here in Alaska, we have 24-hour daylight. So our peonies never stop moving. No, so I mean, I used to do a midnight harvest back when I was a little bit younger. I can't do that anymore, but because we have some blow even during the night, while we're sleeping because it's still light out. So I soon realized that you can't it's impossible to get to all the peonies, right? To harvest them in the closed bud stage, which is what your goal is. And so I had, these partially open peonies, and I didn't want to compost them. So I started thinking, well, gee, maybe I should start a bouquet business. And they were just getting a Saturday market going down in the community south of us. We're in a little town called Nenana, which is halfway between Denali Park and Fairbanks. And so there's a little community south of us that's closer to the park that started a Saturday market. And so I wanted to have other flowers to go with my peonies so I could make bouquets. So I was about 5 or 6 years into our peony field that I started growing annuals. And I took my first year was a massive failure because I didn't know what I was doing. And I didn't know that flowers are much more complicated than vegetables. I'd always had a greenhouse and garden because of my farming background of my parents, but flowers are trickier to start. Like some like to be covered and some don't, and some are cool, like a cool start, and some like a warm start. So I came across Lisa Mason Ziegler in a frantic search to try to figure out what I was doing, and took her flower farming school online. And that helped me out tremendously. And so I started growing annuals. And I have a whole nother field that I grow annuals in.
Okay.
And so you want me to just mention where my sales outlets?
Yeah, yeah.
So I have the Saturday market that I do every Saturday, starting in July, because I don't have anything to sell till after the peonies have bloomed. And I also do a summer bouquet subscription where people can sign up to get a bouquet a week for 6 weeks. They can either sign up for a straight peony bouquet or a mixed bouquet. And that's available up in Fairbanks, which is an hour drive north of us. I I ship peonies, so I have to get to FedEx once a week and so I just use that as my day to deliver bouquets around Fairbanks. And I do it locally here. There's 2 or 3 small communities around us, and then down at the Saturday market, people down there can pick up their bouquets on Saturdays. I open up our farm, and people can stop by anytime and text me if they need a bouquet. I've rescued a lot of husbands who forgot to buy their wife flowers when they went to Fairbanks, because most of us go shopping for groceries and stuff up in Fairbanks, and had a lot of frantic phone calls saying, my wife's birthday is this week. I forgot to buy her something. And I also sell buckets of flowers if people want to DIY their own wedding. And we do ship. We ship to all 48 states. So that's a big part of our business, is shipping to florists and wedding planners. I started something a couple years ago where I have a special offer for flower farmers and florists to ship you a box a week of mixed stems. And basically, I give you a price discount if you sign up to get a box a week for a month or so. And so this is great because you can, put them in your farmers market bouquets. Most people are crazy about anything from Alaska because of all the shows that have been on, Ice Road Truckers and all those. And my customers have found if they put on social media that they're getting in Alaska peonies, and to do a deal where if you can add a peony to your bouquet or a peony or two, or you're going to have them at your farmer's market. A lot of my folks sell out with pre-orders before they even get the box from me.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
super.
So it's a
Yeah.
great thing. And July can be slow for many florists and farmers markets. And so this is a great chance for you to get something special in. I mean, and our Alaska peonies are huge because of the 24-hour daylight. They're much bigger than most of the ones you're going to grow down in the States. So it's a unique thing you can add to your sales in July and August and give a little boost there.
Okay.
So we
I
do
was going to ask your shipping months. Okay. July and
that.
August.
August and the first week of September. Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah, that's how, I mean, I just was having a florist text me and say, is there any way you can store your peonies till like the very end of August? And I was like, no, like just get them from Alaska
Hmm. Yeah.
for a wedding. And it's just, yeah. So I've sent some florists your direction from Michigan. Hopefully that, I don't know if it came to fruition, but I've definitely given people your information. Like, no, I don't have peonies. They're not gonna be good, but is a way to get peonies here in August.
Yeah. We also do farm tours. We're big, all the tourists go right by here. We're right on the highway. So I do farm tours, and I offer something called Pics in the Peonies, where people can come on the farm and take selfies. I just charge $10 per adult. Then come take pictures, and I have a picnic table by the field so people can come in and have picnics. So just do a lot of stuff to try to and everybody who walks onto our farm says this is a little piece of heaven. So,
I love that. I love that. Yeah, for those that don't know, I actually used to live in Alaska when I was in the Air Force. I was stationed down near Anchorage, which is quite a ways from where you are. What would that be, like 6 hours probably? Yeah.
300 miles. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So it's a ways down. So you're like inland and I was right on the coast. But yes, it's funny, even with having lived there, I didn't think about the 24-hour daylight, which is funny because I experienced it myself. And yeah, that would have a real impact on your flowers, picking peonies. Wow, that is intense. So, um, okay, well, that is super interesting. I love hearing people's story. That is super, super fun. Thanks for sharing that. But what we're going to get into here is how to grow peonies from the expert that has 5,000 of them. I like can hardly fathom that. That is so, I have 400.
Mhm.
Um, so that is a lot, and for 16 years. So I am personally excited to hear your expertise here. So what I thought we would just start with is kind of like go in the growing cycle. So like planting them, how do you plant them? And then care for them, fertilizing, irrigation, what you do for that, and cutting them back in the fall, and then kind of go to harvesting, harvest stage, storage, and that kind of stuff. So, and then we'll get into your favorite varieties, I think, if that's good.
Sure. So, one of the most important things with peonies is that they like a spot with good drainage and they need as much full sun as you can give them. So, a lot of times people always are asking me, why are my peonies not blooming? And that's one of the main things is if the roots are staying soggy too long. So what I recommend is, um, the year before you need to plan ahead. The year before you're planting peonies is keep an eye on your site, look and see which areas on your farm are getting the most sun, or in your yard if you're a home, gardener. What areas of your yard are getting the most sun? They need ideally at least 8 hours of sun a day. And then what you should do is go out and dig a hole in a couple different places and just pour a big 5 gallon bucket of water in it and watch it and make sure that it goes down in a reasonable amount of time. We had one farmer up here who planted 800 peonies in an area and none of them survived the winter. And he went out and brought, an expert with him and they dug up some of the peonies and they were all mush. And so she did that. She dug a hole, filled it with water, and it just sat there and sat there. It turned out he had what's called a hard pan, which is a level of soil that's really, really hard, 12 inches down in his soil. And it was just all the water was sitting there. So make sure you're picking a spot that has good drainage. It's very important. Another reason peonies don't bloom is they're buried too deep. So I have a really good diagram that shows exactly the depth you should bury a peony that I could share, with you guys if needed. But basically, the eyes should only be a couple inches below the surface, and that's because peonies need a certain amount of cold in the winter. That's what triggers them to, after being cold through the winter and warming up in the spring, is what triggers their eyes to start growing. So peonies need, 30 to 40 days of around freezing temps. So that's one of the things if people live farther south, that's why peonies don't grow too good in the south, is that they really need that cold time. But make sure that the peony eyes, when you plant, dig your hole and position your root. And what I did is I took a ruler and then I put another stick across the ruler at 2 inches. So I made like a T.
Hmm.
And then I put that down in the hole. And right where the 2 inches mark was where I made sure where the eyes were. And then you fill in your dirt and put in, some good compost, put in some fertilizer, and then water it in really good. Another important thing to do is the first year after your roots have gone through a winter, it's very, very common that your soil is going to sink a little bit because obviously you were putting fluffy soil in around your root. And through the winter, it's going to sink a little bit. So the first year, you need to go out and check very gently put your finger down in and check your roots and make sure that they haven't sunk down during the winter. Mm-hmm. And your first year, you're not going to be harvesting off them anyway. So you can very gently kind of dig under them and lift them up a little bit, tuck some more soil underneath them if you need to, or spread the soil out so that the eyes are a little bit closer to the surface, and then in the fall you can reposition them. So that's really important. Another thing when you're planning your peony planting is you need to think about what you're doing with your aisles. And if you are, if you're going to be mowing, and we like having a living walkways. There's been a lot of research that is a lot healthier for your soil because you have lots of alive and teeming microbes under that grass or whatever you plant in your walkways. If you live somewhere where it's hot and you use a bunch of the landscape fabric, you can actually be cooking all the microbes under there. So we have living walkways. We planted clover, and there's a kind of grass called Arctic red fescue that does not spread very fast. It's not a grass that spreads. So we put a grass called Arctic red fescue, and red clover is a variety of clover that doesn't spread a lot, and it's clover is really good for your soil. So we planted Arctic red fescue and clover in our walkways. And so you want to think ahead about if you're going to be mowing, make sure you're measuring that a mower can fit. And we wanted to crowd as many peonies into our field as we could. So we measured for our walking mower. But now that we're older, we kind of wish we had measured for a riding, because we measured steps once. And if you mow our entire field in one day, you walk about 9 miles.
Wow.
So it's important it's really important to measure your lawnmower and make sure you're making enough space between your rows for your lawnmower. And we planted our peonies at 24 inches apart, single rows, 24 inches apart. And I think it's 3 feet between our rows. And so that's how we planted. And you want to make sure you keep them well watered the first couple years. And of course, this is a bit controversial, but it's very important to pinch. It's painful, but it's important to pinch most of the buds off your peonies the first few years. And this is a scientifically proven thing in plants called the source sink idea, that plants only have a limited amount of energy that they can funnel to different things. Blooming a bloom takes a tremendous amount of energy. The most amount of energy a plant needs goes towards blooming a bloom. And so what you want to do is clip those blooms off the first few years so that all the plant's energy goes into the root system, into growing, because the bigger root system you have, the more stems the plant is going to send up. And so in the long run, you're going to get bigger plants. No, it doesn't hurt the plant necessarily if you let them bloom. But in the long run, you'll get bigger plants with more stems. If you clip them off, you can let one bloom to make sure that the variety is correct with what you purchased, because sometimes roots get mixed up and you didn't get what you ordered. Or if you just want to let a couple bloom, to cut them off as shorties and enjoy them in your house, that's okay. But for the most part, the first 2 or 3 years, you should clip off all the blooms. And then you always want to, when they get older, 3 or 4 years old, you're starting to harvest. Like the first, just cut one stem off, because you never want to cut more than 50% of the stems. So for example, if your plant comes up with 12 long stems, you should only cut 5 or 6 as long cuts. And because you want to leave a majority of the foliage to continue to pull in energy and feed the root system for the rest of the summer. So for example, on a 12 stem peony, I might cut only maybe 4 long cuts, which you would cut for a florist, the 22 inches, and then a couple shorties to use in my local bouquets. So don't ever cut more than you have to. Like, you don't need, if you're using your flowers for local bouquets where you only need a 12-inch stem, there's no reason to go through and cut off long stems. The more foliage you can leave on your plant, the more energy it's going to take in to build a bigger root system to give you even more stems the next year. And fertilizing, we use a fertilizer called Grow More. It's a water soluble fertilizer that we put through our irrigation system. and it's a 20-20-20. And we use that in the spring right away uh, when the plants are about 8 inches tall or so. And we actually, during after they start blooming, we actually use it again at like a half solution and just give them a little bit of fertilizer every week because it is taking a tremendous amount of energy from the plants uh, when they're blooming, blooming flowers. And then in August, we use a fertilizer that has a higher middle and last number because those numbers on the fertilizer numbers are the ones that deal with the root system.
Mm.
So the fertilizer numbers are top, all around, and roots for the three numbers. And so getting a fertilizer that maybe, I think we get one that's 30-30-60 or something like that. I don't remember for sure, but same thing. It's from Grow More. And we put that down in August for
What do you
fertilizer.
do? That's really helpful. So I'm pretty sad because I lost a huge percentage of my peonies this year to um, an a normal temperature, but we had an early April, like beginning of April, and then we had a very normal mid-April, and we got down to like 24 degrees and froze my buds, a lot of them, more so than I even thought.
Mm-hmm.
But most of them are third year. Like I have a section of 100 with third year plants, and I counted like 40 blooms on these
Uh,
100 plants.
mm-hmm.
So now I'm like, okay, well, maybe it's really better in the long run that they all died. So my plants will get bigger, but
Yeah, yeah.
um, I lost them.
Heartbreaking. And that's another thing is that really honestly, it's better if you can diversify a bit. Like because every year something can happen. And if you are only doing peonies, I know it's popular these days on some of the social media places where there's people saying, oh, plant 4,000 peonies and, you can get rich. And it's so easy, but still there's things you need to keep doing. Like one of the things too I wanted to mention is please keep watering your peonies throughout the summer and the fall. A lot of people forget about their peonies after they're done blooming. And the problem with that is that peonies set their buds in the late summer that are going to be next year's stems. They start growing the little eyes on their root system in August and September. If you're not watering them, then the plant's putting all their energy into surviving
Mhm.
and does not have energy to funnel to developing the little buds for next year. And had another flower farmer contact me in like early last summer, and she said, I have hardly any buds on my peonies. What's going on? Well, we talked about the previous year, and it turned out, yes, she didn't. She had not watered her peonies all of August and September. They were in a drought, and that's what happened. The peonies were using all their energy to survive and didn't have any energy to develop buds. So but I really recommend, because things can happen. I have another friend up in Talkeetna, Alaska. She lost her entire crop from hail,
Oh.
had a huge hailstorm and just pummeled everything. So it's really important, I think, to diversify. You can have things happen every year that we have multiple sales channels. And so last year we had another series of wildland fires that were north and south of us. The the highway was shut down on both ends with pilot cars. People had to wait 45 minutes, and I lost almost my entire income of on-farm sales and farm tours and stuff because nobody wanted to sit in a pilot car waiting place for 45 minutes and then follow a pilot car at 20 miles an hour for another 40 minutes, come to the farm to do something, and then have to face the same thing going back either way to Denali Park or Fairbanks. So but I had I had my shipping, out of state shipping going on. And it's just important to diversify and have multiple streams of income for
Hmm.
your farm so that if one stream gets hit one year, you're not totally losing all your money.
Yeah, yeah. It's been an interesting loss. I was thinking Yeah, I mean, I lost like at least 70%. The one that looks good is the Sarah Bernhardt's, which is interesting. Just must have been where the buds were. They have a little bit of loss, but almost all my other varieties are almost like a 90% loss, which is,
That's heartbreaking.
yeah, the coral charms are a little better than that, but yeah, it's a lot. And not like I have thousands and thousands of them, but they're one of my top,
Yeah.
income producers every year. Okay, yes. Could you tell us what you do about weeds?
So I have a bit of a different philosophy on weeds than some people. Where we planted our peonies was originally a birch woods. So were a lot of natural plants in that woods that grew there anyways. And peonies actually came from China originally, where they grew on the steeps, which is the grassy hillsides and mountains in China. And they grew right in with the other grasses and things that were growing. And so in our first years, we weeded really hard, really focused on weeding. I hire kids from our local town, um, kids that are in elementary and junior high. Our little town doesn't really have anywhere where kids can earn money. So I always have a group of local kids that are totally delighted to come work for me. And they only work 2 or 3 hours a day because that's all their attention span is. But they come and they can earn money, to go to a summer camp or use at the fair, the local fair that happens in August. And so we really hit weeding hard the first few years. So I feel like we got a lot of the weed seed bank out. And so then we reached the point where our field got so big that I couldn't really afford to hire someone to weed that entire field, right? And so we did some experimenting with just letting some of the local grasses grow over the summer around the plants. And one thing that we learned in our particular situation is our July is extremely dry. In fact, we can go an entire month of July and not have any rain. And some of the things that they've learned from recent research they've done on soil is the more root systems you have in your soil, actually, the better it is because it retains moisture better and there's more movement of the microbes around in the soil. So we just decided to give it a try to just let the local grasses that are out there and there's wildflowers and stuff, just let them grow between the peonies. And it has not impacted them whatsoever. And we feel that it is healthier for our peonies because they are retaining moisture. When we do irrigate, they retain moisture because all those grasses hold it in. So what we do now is we use a weed eater. We just go through and we cut if the grasses start getting, a foot or so high, we just go through with a weed eater between the peonies and knock them down a little bit. But the flowers, there's lots of wildflowers that are blooming around the peonies like fireweed.
Mhm.
I have a lot of fireweed out in that field, which is a purple flower. For those of you who don't know, beautiful wild Alaska purple flower. And it looks gorgeous with when the peonies are blooming and the fireweed is blooming. It's just, and so I have a lot of people stopping in just to take pictures of that. And so, and it is allowed me to hire those kids to do other things that are more important. And of course, nobody likes to weed, so it's
Mhm.
always a headache trying to figure out a way to get the kids to actually keep weeding and not just sit there talking and
So
stuff.
you don't use landscape fabric, you don't mulch, and you don't weed much beside maintaining weed
Uh-huh, yeah,
whacking a little bit.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so honestly, I mean, I think that like a lot of people are saying that whole idea of bare soil, like they're starting to do a lot of people, they encourage you to interplant even with your other annual flowers, interplant shorter flowers around your taller flowers so that you have that soil covered and so that there is lots of root systems in the soil.
Mhm.
And I followed Jenny Love is another flower farmer on the East Coast
Mhm.
who is very much into sustainable farming. And that's what she does. She does a lot of interplanting now and having multiple root systems in her ground and just finding, but our peonies have not suffered whatsoever from having grasses and other things growing around them. They do just fine.
Yeah, that's really interesting. That's really great. I was just talking with another farmer, and she was saying how she, especially for young peonies, interplants in the hole because they're not nearly very big, and then otherwise you just have all these weeds in that bare
Right.
soil.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's really smart.
So it's just a different concept, a different way of and people. I was worried for a while that people would think, the whole place looks like weedy or something, but when I explained to people the reason why we're doing what we're doing, they're like, oh yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds really delightful actually to have fireweed. And fireweed's tall, so it's
Hmm.
probably, as tall as the peonies, I would think, right?
Hmm.
Yeah. Okay, so I think we've covered growing, weeding, fertilizing, planting. What about harvesting?
One thing that folks need to think about when they are planting peonies is to think down the road. Number one, you're going to definitely need a chiller, and if possible, you're going to need a different chiller for your peonies than your other annuals because the University of Alaska Fairbanks, when our whole peony industry got started up here, they got some grants and they did a bunch of research on best practices for peonies. One of the things they learned is that if you chill a peony for at least 72 hours after you harvest it, it triples the vase life. So that's really important that you have a chiller that you can put your peonies into immediately after harvesting. And ideally, it's 33 degrees is the best temp. The experiments they did, when you get up to 36, 38, 40 degrees, like your normal setting for other flowers, peonies will continue to open in the chiller. They need to be really, really cold. So you need to think down the line, if you're just planting peonies in 3 or 4 years, they're going to need a chiller. And the other thing is labor. As I mentioned before, peony harvest is extremely intensive, short period of time. And I have pictures of my entire field in bloom, and that's a total accident. It shouldn't look like that. But the reason is there's several pictures I had made professionally that is because I mistakenly, year 4 or 5, thought I could do all the harvesting myself. And I couldn't keep up with it. And before I knew it, the whole field was blown. And so you're going to need help, whether you get, your mom and dad, your sisters, your brothers, or hire some help. But we have to go through our field every 2 hours. Like literally, we finish one harvest, and that thing about peonies being early, mid, and late. It isn't weeks. It isn't like early is beginning of July, mid is end of July, late is August. No, it's oftentimes, at least up here for us, it's a matter of days.
Hmm.
Like the early ones are blooming, and then the next week, the mid ones are blooming, and then the next week, the late ones are blooming.
Yeah,
So
for sure here too.
I
Hmm.
have a whole team again. I have kids that come and help me. And my husband helps me in the evenings when he gets off work. My husband still is working full time. So I have kids that help me during the day. And then I have my husband helps me with the evening harvest. And so it's especially if you have hot weather. If you have hot weather, they're going to move like crazy. And you want to get as many of them as you can in the closed bud because that's how you store them. That's how they last the longest. Uh, you should probably actually not be selling blown open peonies unless you let your customers know that they're going to have a very short base life. They're probably only going to last 3 or 4 days if you harvest them and they're already open. Partially open ones have a bit longer if you get them in the chiller. Get them in the chiller and let them chill for 3 or 4 days before you sell them. That will increase their base life a great deal. And as flower farmers, we are always, you know, uh, we're almost like Marines, adapt and overcome. And one of the things that, again, it was killing me to throw away all those blown open peonies. So I started harvesting them. I have another group of kids that goes through and harvests the blown open ones. We leave some in the field for pictures and the ones that are on top, for pictures and people that want to come through and do a U pick. But a lot of them I harvest, I dry them, and I make peony petal potpourri. And I make products with the peony petals have wonderful medicinal properties. They've been used in China for years for medicinal things. They have antioxidant properties and stuff. So you can make a lot of, I make a shower buff that has peony petals in it and peony soap, petal soap, and those kind of things. So, you can make use of every single part of the peony. You don't have to compost
Mhm.
all those peony buds. You can dry them. I sell at bazaars all winter. I sell little jars of peony petal potpourri, little vintage jars. There's some cool vintage stickers you can order on Amazon that are vintage seed packets from back in the day. And so you put the little vintage sticker on there and put peony potpourri inside, and they sell really well. Or you could sell them at your farmer's market. Very, very popular thing for people to buy. So, yeah. So, when you're harvesting, like I said, try to get them as uh, good bud as you can. And in your early years, one thing you can do is do some experimenting because I regret now we have 21 varieties. And I kind of regret that because every variety harvests ideally at a different stage. Like a lot of the reds need to be open a little bit. They need to have, like if you put a quarter on top of their bud, that there's a quarter of the inside of the bud showing. A lot of the reds, if you harvest them when they're a firmer bud, they'll never open. And every variety harvests at a different stage. Sarah Bernhardt's can be harvested pretty hard and they'll still open. So do some experimenting in your first years before you're actually selling. Cut a peony at a certain stage, take notes, cut it pretty firm, put it in the chiller overnight, then take it out, put it in a glass of water, see if it opens. And by doing that, you'll kind of get an idea of each of the varieties that you have and when is the best stage to open, to harvest them for ideal for storing them.
Mm.
Our goal at our farm, anyways, is to be able to store them for a month or so. And so we really were interested in if you're selling at a local farmer's market, that's not so critical. But if you're wanting to store some to keep selling through the summer, then figuring out the ideal stage that you can harvest it, store it, and it will still open when you take it out and put it in water. So a lot of it is taking notes. Most of the pinks, when the top petal is just barely lifting off, and you can squeeze on the sides and it's a little bit soft. And if you take a peony bud and you put your two fingers on it and you press down on top with your thumb, you're going to feel a little marble bump in there. As soon as that marble bump goes away and it just feels flat, and there's a little bit of give, you can usually harvest most of the whites and pinks that way.
Mm. What about Kansas is always a tricky one for me. It's always got to be more open than you think. And yeah, so I've done that like, okay, I think this is good and I cut it, bring it inside. Nope, it really is not opening. And
Um,
every year I'm always like,
yeah,
when
Kansas is a bugger. I have a friend who has Kansas, and she's thinking about taking them all out and putting some.
Oh, okay.
I have one called Grover Cleveland that's like that's a beautiful, deep, rosy red, but and then I can walk out and oh, these aren't ready, and you walk out the next morning, they're all blown.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So what kind of lead us into um um as we're kind of wrapping up here, what are some of your favorite varieties? If you could choose, like, I don't know, your top five or seven, what would you recommend growing to start with?
Well, it's kind of hard to answer that, but because the one thing you need to think about is what is your market? Because different colors of peonies are appropriate for different markets. If you're going to be selling to florists who do weddings or wedding event planners, people who do weddings, they're going to want mostly whites and blushes and coral. The number one peony that's the most popular for weddings is corals. I'm very, very sad because we just cannot grow them up here. It just gets too cold. I started out with 50 corals and I have 12 left. But uh, you're going to want mostly blushes and whites, the softer colors, and maybe a light pink like Sarah Bernhardt. Uh, those are the colors that, for the most part, I mean, it is kind of tending towards the more jewel colors. So when I started out, they were telling us to plant 50% whites, 25% pinks, and 25% reds. Well, now the wedding trend is switching a bit to where a lot of the jewel tones are popular. So it's probably a good idea to plant a really nice jewel tone red if you are selling to wedding florists. The florists who have regular flower shops and farmers market, if you're doing farmers market, they tend to like the brighter colors. And so that if you're going to be aiming towards that, then you'll want to be planting some of the brighter colors. Uh, Two of the standards for whites are Festiva and Duchess. Festiva is a bit tricky because it has little red flecks in it, even though it's a beautiful white, and it's in the top 20 for fragrances of the most fragrant peonies. But a lot of florists don't want that little red fleck in there. Some of them will clip it out. Uh, Duchess is just a beautiful creamy white with another one that's a wonderful fragrance. And then my actual favorite white is one called Avalanche,
Mhm.
which is the appropriate name for Alaska peony. But it's a huge fluffy white. It's just gorgeous. For light pinks, I like Sarah Bernhardt, of course. She's the old standard, and really one of the easiest to grow. Uh, they they last through our cold winters with no problems whatsoever. They're a little bit easier to harvest because you can harvest them a little bit firmer and they'll still open. For a hotter pink, I really like Dr. Alexander Fleming. It's another bomb-shaped one that's a beautiful hot pink. And another one called Edulus superba, which is the same color, but it's got white frosted edges on the edges of the petals. And it's my first one. It's an early one. It's my first one to come on in the spring. So, anyways, those are my favorites for pinks. And I don't really have a blush, but blushes are a really popular color for weddings. So I don't have a recommendation for that. I could check and see what some of my fellow farmers might be growing that have blushes. So, and then for a red, we have Grover Cleveland, which is that really rosy red. But again, the reds are a bit trickier to harvest, so it takes some practice. And I know that one of my fellow flower farmers here grows, uh, I think it's Cherokee, one called Cherokee, which is a really deep red that they really like.
And then you can't grow corals. Wow, that's
Yeah, I have, like I said, I have 12 left.
Oh man. So I grow up blush. It's only my third year, which I don't think I'm even gonna hardly get a single bloom from it this year. Is very pretty though, was Solange. So I'm hoping that's a good one. But it's a very pretty blush. Yeah, I sell mostly to florists, and so yeah, I just needed more whites and blushes. So that was what this like
Mhm.
100 that were coming into their third year. They're all whites and blushes, and I think there are some monstruals in it too, pink. But yeah.
And I have
So,
like I ship to a lot of florists, and we have a ton of festivas. I mean, because that's what I planted 50%, and I try to sneak as many of those in the box as I can.
mm,
But I'm often getting an email from them saying, "Can you please put less whites and more colors in?"
oh, okay, yeah, yeah,
Um,
interesting. I I love Duchess. I just think I don't know. I haven't grown Festiva, but I really do love the Duchess de Numenors. They're
mhm.
just one of my favorites. They're so pretty and they're just very productive and I don't know. They just seem pretty hardy. My Coral Charms, I have a very hard time with them and I bought the Seattle Wholesale Growers Floral Standard book and in there they have a list of all these peonies and they have how productive they are and they have almost no flower listed this way, but they have the Coral Charms listed as very productive and I was like no,
Mhm.
that is completely not my experience at
Mhm.
all. Like my um my 8th year. I have three peonies on the side of my house that I planted 8 years ago before I started flower farming. And I have a coral charm, a Duchess de Numenor, and one I don't know what it is, but it's a pale pink. I'm not sure what it is. It's beautiful. Just like for example, this year I counted that one Duchess de Numenor has 45 blooms and the coral charm has 15. Uh,
Wow.
yeah, and it's an old plant. So anyway, I'm like, and all my coral charms get like 4 or 5 blooms. Like they are, I don't know. I almost feel like I'm ready to pull them out and just plant more Duchess or
How cold do
Baron.
you get in the winter?
Um, So we are insulated by Lake Michigan. Um, this year we got exceptionally cold. It was negative 18 degrees. Whew, that was very, very cold for us. That is not typical. I mean, we go down below freezing for a long period of time, but if we are below zero, we're all cold. It goes below zero every year. Like, that's not unusual, but we're like, oh, this is really cold. But for it to be sustained below zero, is, not very typical, but easy. We're in the teens all the
Mhm,
time,
mhm.
which isn't, super cold. Um, so I don't know.
Yeah. They tend to be corals. We had actually had the breeder up to Alaska to for a conference that we had, who bred the coral charms, and he said that they are two warmish season peonies that he bred together, and so they really tend to not like really, really cold temperatures.
Interesting. Because, of course, the Seattle Wholesale Growers book is put out by people from Seattle. So they're in a much warmer climate. So maybe the corals do super well there.
Um,
But anyway, it is interesting. I've also never grown like coral sunset either. So I can't compare that one. I do have a soft salmon saucer, which again doesn't seem, it's only in third year, so I can't really compare. I have some coral charms that are 8 years old, 6 years old, 5 years old, so those I have more data on. But yeah, super interesting to like really see what works well. But yeah, I mean, there's kind of no point to have a peony that's giving you 5 blooms per year when you could have one giving you 40.
right. And that's when we were first starting, since we were right in the beginning, they said, oh, plant a lot of varieties so we can see what grows up here, so we can tell future people who might want to get into this which are the best varieties for Alaska, which I did. But now it's really a headache for harvesting because they all harvest at different stages, and I do have some that are more doubles rather than the typical bomb shape. And so that's kind of the nice thing about offering a farmer's choice box or something, because I can put in some of those doubles and stuff that are still really beautiful, but they're not the big bombs that the florists are wanting.
Mm.
It gives me a chance to be able to sell some of those.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's great. I love how you have so many different ways to sell peonies, even like drying them and um, selling them to all these different outlets. That's really great. Maybe we could talk really briefly. I did get a lot of questions about how to store them. Do you wrap them in craft paper? And how I want to know, like, how do you get them dry, or do you not? Like we have so much dew in the morning, even when it's not rained, they're like dripping. And so I'm curious on a scale how you do those two things.
So we store our peonies in the black bulb crates because we store thousands of them. Our first few years, we stored them in the 5-gallon buckets, but that's not a very efficient use of space. And so what we started doing was using the black bulb crates. And something that's important to remember is that peonies do need a bit of air movement and airflow. And it's kind of a tricky balance between making sure you're conserving the moisture, that they're not drying out in your chiller, but also that there's some air movement. And one of the funguses that really peonies are susceptible to is botrytis. And botrytis is a fungus that's out there. It's in decaying matter. It lives and grows in decaying matter. And so that's why one thing I wanted to mention too, going back, is if you're using mulch around your peonies, any kind of wood chips or something, you always want to pull that back in the spring, at least 6 to 8 inches out away from your stems. because botrytis is going to grow in that decaying wood chip matter. And then when your baby peonies come up in the spring, they can be exposed to the botrytis spores. So it's very important if you're mulching, it's okay to put mulch on for the winter, but you want to pull that back from your stems. So botrytis is everywhere. So it's kind of possible that you could bring some botrytis into your chiller, and botrytis can spread really quickly in a chiller. So that's why you want to have your peonies as dry as you can. I've seen on, social media that some people are wrapping their peony stems in plastic wrap. That actually is not a good idea, because if you have any botrytis or any field, there's a black field mold fungus that's out there, very common in flower fields. If you have any of those spores on your peonies and you're putting them now plastic wrap around them where they're in a closed environment, that stuff is going to grow. And I just saw someone on Facebook who said they put some peonies in to store for a wedding. They went to take them out and they're all moldy. And so they really need some air movement. We get big rolls of the quilting fabric that you put inside quilts, that Dacron, polyester Dacron fleece quilting. And what we do is we line the bottom of our crate with that. That protects the peonies that are on the bottom from getting smushed against the hard plastic crate. And then we harvest into the 5-gallon buckets out in the field. We have a harvesting wagon we pull behind our four-wheeler. But then we bring them in. Every summer I hire a pack house manager, I call them. They take all the stems out of the 5. We put the buckets immediately into the chiller and let them chill for a couple days. Then the pack house manager pulls out the buckets and he sorts them, checks them to make sure they're all quality stems, make sure there's no bug bites and chews and stuff on them. And then we lay them in the black crates and we lay them across the bottom with the buds. You don't want them touching the black crate, but just a little half an inch away. And then you do another layer the other way and you just back and forth till the crate is full. And then we tuck another piece of fleece around the top of the crate. So the fleece keeps some of the moisture in, but it also allows air movement. And the black crates have those holes in the side, so it allows air movement.
So is this like batting, like the inside of
the batting?
Batting.
Yep.
Okay. Okay.
And it's important that your chiller humidity stays up. It needs to be at least 90%. And so we have a monitor that monitors the humidity in the chiller, because we are storing our peonies for a month or so. If you're selling them within a couple weeks, you probably don't need to worry about this too much. But if you're wanting to store some, and what you can do is, if your humidity is getting low, is you can just put a bucket of water under your chiller. We have a professional chiller in the ceiling unit, and so it will suck the water up and spread it, and it brings the humidity up. Or if you're using a cool bot, you could put a bucket of water over on the wall under your cool bot, where it's bringing in the air, sucking up the air to circulate.
Yeah, I suppose if you just have a specific cooler for peonies, there's not going to be water in there, because I'm thinking, oh, I have buckets of water in my cooler full of other flowers. But yeah,
Well, it's really important that you keep you can store them in buckets in water for a few days.
Mhm.
You got to make sure the water stays really cold, because water is, again, going to trigger the peonies to keep opening. If you're not selling your peonies for a week or so, you should probably dry store them.
Mhm.
And
And
also,
then,
if you're dry storing, it's important to let your florist know that the peonies are going to open quickly. When you dry store them, they open pretty quickly once you cut them and put them in water. And so you need to let your florist know that they need to keep them in their chiller until they are ready, and like the day before they're going to design with them. Because that was one of my learning curves when the first year I was shipping, was I was getting all these calls from florists who were doing the typical, as soon as they got the peony box in, they were recutting the stems and putting them in water immediately, because that's what you do with all your other flowers you get. And so they were calling me saying, these peonies blew open and it's 2 days for my wedding yet. And so I finally realized I got to put a little card in my box and say, if you're not using these, keep them, just put the box right in your chiller and open the lid to keep them in the chiller until about a day before you're ready to start designing with them, and then cut them and put them in water.
Yeah, that's I had did that last year with a florist that wanted like a couple hundred peonies for a wedding in early July. And so I'm going from late May to early July with these, and I kept them in my cooler and I brought them to her dry. The wedding was on, the weekend. I brought them to her on Tuesday and I said, because I'd done some testing with
Mm-hmm.
them, and I said, these are going to blow really fast and they'll be fine for the wedding, but don't put them in your water until
Mm-hmm.
like
Yeah.
the day before. And they were positively gorgeous. They were so beautiful. Yeah, it worked out really well. But yeah, if I would have brought them to her wet, you know, um, it would have not have been
And
good.
really, this idea of storing peonies long term is kind of a new thing, right?
Hmm.
It's only been around for 4 or 5 years, maybe. And there's some florists they just don't know. They just don't
Right.
know. So it's really important that you let your florist know.
Yeah,
Uh,
and these have probably been stored like 6 weeks.
mhm.
So, yeah, yeah. One thing I don't think we covered, to go back a little bit, what about, we did talk a little bit about botrytis, but do you have pest issues or like disease issues?
I don't have pest issues. That's one of the nice things about Alaska is that we have hardly any of the pests that y'all have down there in the States. But uh, there is a little bug in that actually lives and it eats the buds on birch trees. And we have a lot of birch trees around us. And one year that bug found our peony field, and we had gone down to see our son graduate from the basic training academy in Texas for the Air Force. Came back, and our entire field of whites was almost destroyed because it sticks. It's has a little siphon. It sticks down in the bud and sucks all the juice out of the bud. So one of the products we have used is called Belief, and Belief is one of those products that the plant absorbs. So once you spray it on a couple times, the plant absorbs it, and it only affects sucking insects. So any insects like aphids or anything that sucks on a bud, once they encounter it, it paralyzes them and they die. So it doesn't bother bees and some of the other beneficial insects that we want in our flowers. So it's called Belief. And then for a really good fungicide spray that we use for botrytis is called Topsin. I think it's Topsin. And again, it's another one that the plant absorbs. And so we usually spray that. We don't really have much trouble with botrytis because we are so dry. But if I have a really rainy season going on, I might spray that on, especially a few weeks before harvest. And again, it's a powder that you mix up and spray. Uh, you only use like a fourth a cup of it for big 20 or 30 gallons. And like most things like that, it's rather expensive. So if you can go in with another farmer, because once you buy it, you'll have it for quite a few years because they only sell it in bigger quantities. So Topsin is a good thing for botrytis if you're having problems. And that you should spray on when the plants are 8 to 10 inches tall. And then again, 2 weeks later to get it good and absorbed into the plant. Irrigating, just real quick, you had mentioned irrigating. We originally used irrigation lines with little emitters on the top. They're like a little sprinkler. And there's a company called DripWorks, which is really great for irrigation. They're wonderful to work with if you call them and tell them what you're trying to do and how much area you have and what you're growing. They can set you up with everything you need. They've been wonderful for us. So for many years, we used just an irrigation system where the water goes, each row has an individual line. But we eventually learned the last few years that our peonies were not getting enough water. We didn't feel like they were. So we were able to get an ag loan, and we got a sprinkler reel. And what it is it's a big reel that has a little unit that you pull down your aisle with your four-wheeler. And it's attached to a hose, and the hose goes back to the reel. and you turn it on, and it automatically clicks the little R2D2 sprinkler thing back a couple inches. And so it's wonderful. It has saved me so much time because I used to have to be opening irrigation lines and closing irrigation lines because we only had enough power to maybe water 20 rows at a time. So I had to water 20 rows, go back up to the house, turn the pump off, go down, close those lines, open the other lines. And it would take me 2 days to water the entire field. But now we can just, my husband can just pull that little unit out with a four-wheeler, turn it on, and we can walk away and leave it, and it turns itself off when the little unit gets back to the reel. And he can do at night when he gets home from work, water half of the field, pulls it over in the morning before he goes to work, turns it on, and it waters the other half of the field. So it's just wonderful. This is what the irrigation reel looks like. It's the
Oh,
little thing that you pull out and
yeah.
you just hook it up to your water supply.
Wow.
People are
It,
interested in that. That's what it's called. Uh, the KIFCO 110 water reel sprinkler.
wow. And it will spray for
Yeah,
such a long ways.
yeah, it sprays a long ways. It sprays over half our field
Oh, wow.
in one go.
Wow, that's amazing. Wow.
Definitely a time saver. And again, there are a lot of, just in case you don't know, there are a lot of great ag loans you can get for women because we are an underrepresented group in farming. And there's lots of great, through the Department of Ag and stuff, a lot of great loans you can get where the interest is super, super low.
Mm,
You
yeah.
can get
Yeah.
for those kind of things for your farm.
Yeah, I got a grant, an NRCS grant 2 years ago. So that was really exciting also. Yeah, but same thing, like women owned,
Mhm.
and then I'm a veteran, so that like I don't know, ranked up my status too. So
Mhm.
yes, there's lots of stuff out there. Yeah, what I wanted to wrap up this part with is just to ask, thank you for all your peony knowledge. I have definitely learned things for sure during this conversation. But one thing I like to ask people when I have them on is just like, do you have any advice or anything you'd like to leave a flower farming audience that you would like to tell us?
Uh, I think it's just if you're in flower farming for a while, you realize that every year something can go wrong, and you just got to go with the flow. You just got to go with especially the weather. We cannot control the weather, and you can drive yourself crazy, worrying about the weather. And uh, I believe that farmers should be the poster child for hope, for the word hope, because we always say, well, maybe next year. And I see across social media so many people who had floods this spring, and same thing, lost a bunch of their flowers from a late frost and things. And you know, farmers are just amazing. We're really good at just pulling up our big girl britches and getting back to work. And I think that's the attitude you have to take is just the joy that flower farmers, especially the joy that we bring people by sharing the joy of flowers uh, and some people always ask my husband, are you making any money? And he always says, how can you put a value on number one, my wife being happy? And number two, the joy that we bring to our customers. He said, you can't put a monetary value on that. So I
Wow.
just want to say too, really quick, that I am on Facebook and Instagram, Fox Hollow Peonies, and I'm totally happy to answer people's questions. I also can do sort of an hour consult with anybody for a very small fee if anybody just wants to pick my brain for an hour, and we can do it over the phone or something. I'm totally happy to do that.
Wow, yeah, I really appreciate that. And then we already talked about your YouTube channel, so I will definitely check that out as well. So thank you so much for being here. And yeah, don't I have I have messaged Wanda with questions in the past, and she's very gracious and at answering them. So I really appreciate that and appreciate you being here.
Yeah, really, really happy to, like I said, I love teaching. I love talking to people about peonies.
Well, thank you.